What is up? Hello, welcome to Awakenings. This is the special Friday the 13th edition of Awakenings. I'm your host, Steve Torment. Tonight, as I said, it's Friday the 13th. I bet a lot of people's having some bad omens and bullshit going on. And what about this fucking coronavirus shit? I've heard people say, literally this week, we're in the end times or something. Anyway, I'm here tonight to present you three very infamous cases of demonic possession. As advertised, I will be talking the true story behind the Exorcist. I also have two other cases of famous demonic possessions that we're going to talk about. All of these cases have been made into very famous movies, so you may find some familiarity in them. Or you may have heard these actual true stories before yourselves. All these cases are insidious in nature. I must tell you before we begin that I'm only offering you the facts as they were reported surrounding these cases. The nature of this show is not to convince you that these things exist, but it is to point out the facts around these particular cases. Okay? So I'm not here trying to say that demonic possession is a real occurrence or anything. I have my theory. I'm sure each of you have your own theory. I'm more or less here just to tell you the story that is based in a true story. Okay? Normally on this screen here, I would be showing you guys some slides of things pertaining to the cases or whatever. As you see right now, it says Awakenings with Steve Torment, my little banner. I did have some slides for you guys. However, I've elected to kind of forego the slides for tonight simply because some of these slides that I was going to show, I'm a little concerned that they may be too graphic in nature and would maybe cause some people some problems mentally or physically or whatever. I probably will show them at another time. And I'm not trying to back out of what I said I was going to do. I'm going to very much do what I said I was going to do. I'm just still kind of researching some things on the legal side. I don't want to show a picture of some kid that got shot in the head or some girl that got gutted or something and somebody flip out, especially if they have family members still surviving, and as in the case of one of the cases on here. I'm not looking to get sued. I'm just trying to tell a story and show you guys the horrific events that unfolded. So for this particular episode, I'm not going to show the slides because I don't want to get sued, basically. The family members of the people involved still live, and the murderer himself still lives and is in prison. So, as you'll hear later. But I will probably show at another time, because I will be talking about some of these cases again later, but in a different way. We'll probably talk about it again at another point, and in which case I will show these slides. Parental discretion is advised during my show. I do cuss, I smoke. Every now and again you might see me take a drink or something, but I'm not really a drinker. But anyways, let's just get on with this, that's what we're here for, right? So, let's get it started. Late in February, of 1949, Father E. Albert Hughes asked his superiors permission to perform an exorcism, on a 13-year-old boy who is publicly known as the pseudonym Roland Doe or Robbie Mannheim. To this date, I want to throw in there, to this date, we're going to use the pseudonym because to this date, the boy's real name hasn't actually officially been released to the public, and I don't want to be a dick and blast this dude's name out, real name out into society when nobody else has done it either, and fuck up this guy's program, that's the shit thing to do. I'm not going to do that. So we're just going to refer to him as Roland Doe for this particular thing. This, my friends, is a true story of the Exorcist. Roland, as we'll call him, belonged to a German Lutheran Christian family that lived originally in Prince George's County, Maryland. Roland was quiet, unpopular, not very athletic, slightly withdrawn, but very studious, Recently, Roland's beloved Aunt Harriet, as I've been told she's named, who was a spiritualist medium, had discovered or had taught him how to use an Ouija board. Okay, we all know about Ouija boards, I believe. If we don't, uh, basically it's a board with a bunch of letters and numbers, and it's got a planchette, and you use a planchette to basically you summon forth the spirit, and you ask them questions, and the planchette moves as according to the spirit onto the letters, and it spells out, a message or whatever. Okay, and the occult side of it, it is used to summon demons, devils, all that kind of thing. Um, there's a lot of bad mojo and a lot of bad publicity around the Ouija board. Okay, so getting back to it. Okay, so after Rowan had learned how to use an Ouija board and was taught by his aunt, who was a spiritualist medium, um, the aunt mysteriously died. Okay, now I believe the autopsy report said it was like a natural cause of death, but you have to understand this is 1949, and in 1949, natural cause of death could have been a wide array of things as compared to now. Now we have things like DNA testing and forensic science, as to where back then they didn't have that. You could have gotten, like, say, a throat slit, and there be no evidence of like a homicide, and they would rule it, an accidental death. So, or natural death. So anyway, is it possible that whatever or whoever Rowan and Harriet were communicating with through the Ouija board killed Harriet? It is a theory of mine that Captain Howdy, as he's called in the movie, was summoned originally through the Ouija board by Rowan and Aunt Harriet, and they were in communication with this entity. It is possible that this entity, as in most demonic possession cases or haunting cases, acted or posed as something not insidious in nature, or in otherwise saying something benevolent, not malevolent, and kind of tricked them or lured them in, let them, got them to trust it. But I have a theory that maybe, just maybe, the entity that they had summoned was this Captain Howdy, as they call him in the film, and maybe he knew that Harriet was going to be a problem and got rid of her in a fashion where back in those days it was ruled as natural death or accidental death. I believe it was natural death. And in that case, then he would be able to get close to Roland, and nobody would really have the knowledge to understand what was occurring. Um, and that is a very distinct possibility, in my opinion. So, furthermore, is it also possible that Roland was also a medium? Now, it has been tested and theorized that mediums, the psychic power or the psychic, ability of a medium can be passed from one, through genetics, through one offspring. So like, let's say the grandma is a medium, it's most likely that the daughter is going to be, a medium, which would be the mom, and then the daughter of the mom, which would now be the granddaughter, would be a possible medium as well. So it is possible that this was passed down through genetics. Anyway, so is it possible that this entity was attracted to Rowan originally because he was a powerful medium and didn't know how to control his power, knew he was weak, he was vulnerable, and knew that if he got rid of Harriet, there would be nobody to stop him? That's a very good question that I have. Anyway, it is reported that after losing his aunt, Roland took to frequently using his Ouija board in an attempt to communicate with her. Okay, so perhaps Captain Howdy started acting like he was Harriet and responding so he could get the trust. Perhaps the entity or entities with which Rowan had been speaking to through the Ouija board was not his aunt at all. It is common practice for entities, especially demons, to assume the identities of something or someone else that is trusting. In doing this, the demon or entity can earn the victim's trust, making them vulnerable for manipulation emotionally, spiritually, mentally, or physically. This is precisely how the entities in the Amityville case were able to possess Ronnie DeFeo Jr. And convince him to murder his entire family in their sleep. We will be talking the Amityville horror here in a little bit. So back to Roland. It seems that shortly after spending so much time on the Ouija board, Roland and his family began hearing faint scratching sounds coming from the floors and walls of his room. Water began dripping from the ceiling and walls without any explainable cause, and his bed would move on its own. Overnight, the noises became more and more violent and spread throughout the house. The faint scratches became brutal blows against the wall. Objects moved Objects that moved were now thrown or violently slammed into family members or visitors of the house. At the same time, Roland changed his entire demeanor. He became more and more withdrawn. At night, strange noises and screams came from his room. Okay, so obviously there's some kind of haunting occurring at this point in the story. Okay, now it's hard to say what all the family, you know what I mean? I mean, this gives a basic account of what occurred, but I mean, could you imagine being one of those family or being Roland himself and just all hell breaking loose all of a sudden? I feel like that would be something to truly behold. Not that I wish that on anybody. Also, usually accompanying demonic activity, experiencers claim to smell rotten meat and hear knocks on the walls and threes mocking of the Holy Trinity of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Unexplained growls are often reported, as well as seeing shadowy figures stalking from the darkness. Okay, now I can tell you as a paranormal investigator, I've had my fair share of accounts, or encounters rather, with demonic or malevolent entities. Okay, in the case of demonic entities, I have personally witnessed and experienced these things that it's talking about. I've smelled the rotten meat. I've heard the knocking on, and the scratching and the growling on the wall, or through the wall rather, and mocking of the Trinity, of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I've also heard, you know, as I said, the growls. I've seen shadowy figures stalking from the darkness. I've seen it with my own two eyes. Okay, so you know, maybe that makes me a little biased in this, but I have encountered these kinds of things. And I've talked to a lot of people out, you know, in the world that have also encountered a lot of these kinds of things. These are the kinds of things that I've spent my whole life studying and researching and trying to understand and get to the bottom of. So if any of you guys are watching this, have any of this stuff, like for real, not bullshit, not some hoax, dumb shit, but for real, have some of this shit going on at your house, or know somebody that does, that would be willing to let me investigate their house, I'll take you guys with me live, and we will go there, and we will investigate it, and we'll see what we can catch. And if you're lying, and it's a hoax, you're going to be exposed live on TV, you know, or on Facebook, or, you know what I mean. If you're telling the truth, maybe, just maybe, this show could be one of those few shows that actually catch live, you know, interaction with a malevolent or benevolent, in some cases, entity, and maybe we can help these people together, you know, and get rid of this thing. I do know how to banish, bind, and expel. I also know how to exorcise demonic entities and malevolent forces. So yeah, I'm the guy you need. Anybody has that going on in their house or knows somebody that does, give me a call. Like, let's do this. So anyway, Roland's family sought the help of every expert that they could find. Okay, they consulted doctors, psychiatrists, and their ministers, but none of them can offer any help or provide any explanation as to what the hell is going on. Okay, please note here that Roland's family consulted both doctors and psychiatrists. Neither group found anything physically or mentally wrong with Roland, so he did pass the psych evaluation. He wasn't nuts. Okay, that's saying something, especially in the 1940s. I mean, granted, maybe their science wasn't as evolved as ours, but they were thorough. I mean, they were about, you know, finding the truth as much as they could, you know, with the given technology they had. So I'm saying the kid took a psych evaluation and passed it. And I would say if they talk to multiple people, the way the story reads is basically they talk to everyone they can find, every expert. So that means he probably passed multiple psych evaluations and multiple physicals, and there was physically and mentally nothing wrong with him. Okay, so that's a little side note you might want to keep in mind there. This is where the family of Roland Doe first met Father Hughes. And alternatively, Father Hughes met Roland for the first time. Father Hughes later stated that Roland had a dark stare as if there was nothing behind his eyes. Does Father Hughes mean to say that Roland was a soulless entity, a soulless being? Um, Hughes also noticed Roland had seemed to have a deep-seated aversion toward anything holy or sacred. When Hughes attempted to speak with Roland, who seemed trance-like, Father Hughes' chair began to levitate slightly off the floor and it slid backward away from Roland. It was at this moment that Hughes knew he was dealing with something truly diabolical. Okay, and let's pause again here, because I have some things I want to point out here. I, you know, I've heard of people and I've seen people who had the same dark stare. I can't account for whether they were truly possessed or if they were just insane, but I have seen people with the same dark stare. Okay, and it is creepy. It does seem, when you talk to a friend or a family member, you see the light in their eyes. You see the life there. When you talk to one of these kinds of people that's going through this problem, their eyes are black. I mean, just black, and there's nothing there. There's no conscience. There's no soul, so to speak. There's just nothing, and pretty much just malevolence. They just want to fucking kill you and get it done, and that's kind of fucked up, to say the least. It's a very unnerving experience. I've also been around these kinds of people that have had these problems and witnessed the deep-seated aversion to anything holy or sacred. That means that they don't like crosses, they don't like rosaries, they don't like holy places such as churches, they don't like priests, and they don't want any part of it whatsoever. And that is truly a sign of something diabolical possessing, or at least being attached to that individual. Father Hughes then asked Roland in Latin, "What's your name?" Roland replied in Latin, "Iligo multe sumus," which means I am legion and we are many. Let me explain here that Roland could not speak Latin. He never took Latin in school. He didn't know how to speak Latin. The purpose of Father Hughes asking in Latin is beneficial because Roland couldn't have known what he had said. Only an occupying demon or entity could understand and respond. I have read about a priest, or several actually, using dead languages such as Aramaic or Sumerian to do exactly this. It's to detect a possession. The reason I am legion and we are many is so intimidating here is because it immediately indicates that there are multiple demonic forces within the same vessel, which means the priest will have to fight so much harder to absolve the afflicted. Father Hughes was unfamiliar with the rites of exorcism, and Roland would be his first. Father Hughes had Roland admitted to the hospital in Washington, D.C. Roland was already in a violent and volatile state at this point, shaking and rocking, spitting, screaming, and having extremely aggressive outbursts. At some point, the nurses at the hospital made the choice to physically restrain Roland and try to get him under control. By now, Father Hughes had been reciting the exorcism rites for 3 consecutive nights with no results. In fact, Roland became increasingly violent. He would foam at the mouth, shout, insult the priest, and attempt to break his restraints. Eventually, Roland succeeded in getting one of his hands free, and with that free hand reached under the bed and physically broke or ripped off one of the springs from under the mattress and sliced Father Hughes with the spring in a gash that went from the inside of his wrist all the way up to the nook of his elbow and bent. Hughes was forced to abandon the exorcism and seek medical attention at this point. After the failed exorcism, Roland eventually returned home, but his condition worsened. Then one night, Roland's mother discovered the word Lewis burned or scratched into Roland's chest. Roland's mother took this to mean that the family needed to relocate from Maryland to St. Louis, Missouri. To me, that seems kind of weird, but we'll go with it. In St. Louis, a cousin put the family in touch with Father Walter H. Halloran and Reverend William Bowdern. The 2 priests decided to perform an exorcism in early March of 1949. So these are the 2 guys that the rest of the story is about. I mean, aside from, obviously, Roland Doe. If you watch the movie The Exorcist, these are the 2 priests that it's referring to in the movie. Just with different names and things. Okay, so the men gathered at the boys' residence on Roanoke Drive. We're going to pause. Anybody that knows that word, Roanoke, I will be talking about the lost colony of Roanoke some point in the future. It is a very riveting story as to what happened to all these colonists that just disappeared. Basically, back in the colonial times, before the founding of America, some Englishmen came here, and basically they came to the United States, is what I'm getting at, before it was the United States, and they landed on a small island, or a small portion, a peninsula basically, which they called Roanoke. After, I believe it was so many months, I don't remember how, I'll have to get into the story later, but basically after a period of time, suddenly all of the people just vanished without a trace. There was one thing found, and it said Croatoan, and it was scribed into a tree in blood, if I remember correctly. Croatoan is another word. It's a dead language word for witch, if I remember correctly. So it's a very sinister, mysterious thing that happened at Roanoke. So it's kind of eerie that this boy lives on Roanoke Drive. Anyways, the priest witness scratches appear all over the boy's body, the bed shaking violently. He spits at them, swears, makes threats, and has repeatedly, increasingly hostile, violent outbursts. The same things that happened in Maryland with Father Hughes when the first exorcism failed. Bowdern and Halloran reported that during the day Roland would be calm, but at night he would suffer from violent outbursts, screaming, violent hatred of holy objects and people. They noted that objects would fly about the room and that Roland would slip into a trance-like state and make guttural voices and noises, okay? On one occasion, the scratches formed an X on Roland's chest, which the priest thought was a Roman numeral 10, meaning he was possessed by 10 demons. Okay, and I'm going to explain this to you. In Roman times, 10 cohorts was a legion, okay? Or 80 centurions. Okay, so 80 centurions is a legion, or 10 cohorts. Okay, so 8 centurions was one cohort, so it's suggestive that they could conclude 10 demons. I don't know how much sense that makes to you guys, it makes perfect sense to me, but I'm reading it. So basically you have 10 cohorts, okay, so 10 cohorts is a legion, or otherwise known as 80 centurions. Okay, so 8 of those centurions is one cohort. So if there's a Roman numeral 10, it means there's 10 demons, or 10 cohorts of demons. Okay, so moving on here, as confusing as that might be, let's move on here, that doesn't really matter. Anyway, on March 20th, the exorcism reached an unhealthy level when Roland urinated all over the bed and began cursing and shouting at the priests. Roland's parents then took Roland to the Alexian Brothers Hospital in St. Louis. The exorcism rites continued day after day and night after night. Okay. Then on April 18th, the Monday after Easter, Roland awoke with violent seizures and shouted at the priest, saying Satan would always be with him. The priest laid holy relics, crucifixes, medals, and rosaries all around Roland and on him. Later that evening, the two priests joined together and called upon Saint Michael to expel Satan from Roland's body. 7 minutes later, after the prayer had concluded, 7 minutes, now that's a strange number, that's a holy number in a lot of cases. So 7 minutes passed, and after that 7 minutes, finally Roland came out of his trance and simply said, he's gone. Finally the ordeal was over. The priest had succeeded in exorcising the demons within Roland. Roland, however, went on to live a completely normal life after that. He went to work for NASA, and he got married, and he had children. His afflictions never returned. In 1971, an author named William Peter Blatty wrote the best-selling novel, The Exorcist, which was based on the diaries of Bowden and Halloran. The book stayed on the bestseller list for 54 weeks and spawned the hit movie in 1973. The production of the film was gripped on several occasions with calamities that left the cast and crew extremely shaken. At 2:30 a.m. one morning, a fire broke out, destroying the set. Production costs quickly rose to at least twice the projected production costs. This fire delayed filming by like 6 weeks, I think is what it says. many people on the set involved in the production became ill or got injured, and 9 died, which is also a significant number because in witchcraft you bind with 9 knots. The incident didn't stop there. In post-production, strange images and double images and strange sounds and growls appeared on the film. Another fire broke out on another set related to the film, and ultimately, in the end, 2 priests that were acting as advisors were called in. The entire cast, the entire crew, were called in on site, and an exorcism was done on the entire cast, crew, and in the filming site. Okay, so the film opened on December 26th of 1973 to massive crowds. Okay, within weeks of the first public screenings of the film, stories started to emerge that the audience members were fainting and vomiting in theaters. There were reports of disturbing nightmares and reports of a number of theater ushers being hospitalized or quitting their jobs after successive showings of the movie. Moviegoers reported horrific hallucinations and even people being carried out of theaters on stretchers. Okay, I'm 42 years old, and in my 42 years of life, I've been to a lot of movies, man, and I've seen a lot of movies that were even, I guess the word would be startling or disturbing in nature. A lot of people said the new movie with Joaquin Phoenix, Joker, was very disturbing in nature. I didn't find it to be all that disturbing, but it was a fantastic film, if you haven't seen it, by the way. Just giving that film a little plug there. But there was a couple of movies out there in the world that I have watched that personally, it may not bother you, but personally kind of bothered me. One of them was called As Above, So Below. It was just a very weird movie. It's very confusing, very disorienting kind of movie. Kind of fucked with me a little bit. And there's been a few others. As a kid, the movie Poltergeist really fucked with me because as I said last week on the episode, I had the same clown that was in that movie, and it fucking was possessed. And no joke. Anyway, so yeah, there are movies out there that fuck with people, but in my 42 years of life, I've never seen a movie fuck with people the way this movie has fucked with people. And that's kind of my point. So I kind of wonder, like, did the curse, or let me note here too, when there is an exorcism or there is a demonic entity present, okay, say, for example, a demonic entity was to be summoned in my fucking office here, and then I did an exorcism and I expelled the demonic force, okay? Even though I've expelled the demonic force, there's this residue, this stain that is left behind by the unholy. And it works the same with people. A person that has been touched by the devil, like truly touched by the devil, or truly demonic possessed, and then they are exorcised, they're not the same afterward. I mean, they're more so the same, but they're stained. They're always tainted with this trace of what happened. Like a scar. It never goes away. So I wonder if some of the filming supposedly occurred in the same residence. They used in some cases they used the same residence from the actual story of Roland Doe, and some of the scenes in the movie were faked, and they were sets. So like the interior of the house is completely different. The staircase is in a different way, built in a different way in a different place. Things of that nature. There's things that Hollywood changed to make it, more accessible for shooting and fit the time period and things more. But I just think it's incredible that this possession occurred, was exorcised, but the stain was so intense that it caused all this mayhem on the movie set, which was on location of the actual house. Some more priests were called in to exorcise it again, and then when the film came out, the stain was in the film. It was literally in the film, the negative of the film. So the moviegoers were being literally, not possessed, but they were literally being kind of like haunted or shocked, or however you want to say it, by these disturbing feats. Okay, I will say that I believe the guy's name that directed the movie, I own the movie, it's up there somewhere. I think his name was like William Friedkin or something like that, Friedkin or something. Anyway, I've watched the hidden features on the movie. I literally sat and watched this movie 3 times, back to back, boom, boom, boom. Don't ask me why I picked 3, it just kind of worked out like that. It wasn't meant to be that way, but I just watched it 3 times, back to back, and I studied this film. And I watched both versions. I have 2 versions of it. I have the widescreen version, I have the theatrical version, and I have the unrated version. And I watched all 3 of them back to back and studied and watched all the making of and all the hidden, shit behind the movie and all that stuff. And I'm telling you, like, it's just really bizarre that this entity or these entities that was possessing Roland Doe had to have been like the devil themselves to be that powerful, that their stain left behind, their trace that was left behind was that influential that it affected the filming of the movie, the actors and everything, and then affected the moviegoers that saw the movie. So that means the stain leaked into the movie somehow. Um, I am not even going into all the crap that happened to the actors and shit. I know the mom in the movie severely injured her back. Some of the people, went fucking crazy. Like, I mean, you should check it out, like, a little more. I really wish I would have spent a little more time getting all the information. I was trying to more so focus on Roland Doe himself, not so much the production of the movie, but maybe I will do that later on and do a episode on cursed movies or something like that, because the movie Poltergeist from the 80s that I was referring to earlier is also a movie that was considered to be cursed in its production. So maybe I'll do an episode on that later on. But let's get back to this. So, in conclusion, was Roland Doe truly possessed by the devil? Did divine intervention occur here? Did God step in, reach into Roland Doe and grab the devil by the throat and rip him out of Roland Doe? Or was this all some product of extreme mass hysteria or possibly mental illness of a teenage boy? I guess nobody will truly know except for the people involved. Unfortunately, as I understand it, a lot of the individuals that were involved in it are no longer with us or not wishing to speak about the subject. So I don't think we'll ever really know the truth behind what really happened with Roland Doe, but that's how it's been reported to the public. Um, but there are numerous books and things. There's a book that is the actual diary of Halloran and Bowdern that you can go that the movie is written from. That goes into way more detail. I suggest you guys read it. Anyways, moving on here, because we're on a time thing here. Moving on here, another example of a true life exorcism case making it to the big screen is the exorcism of Annalise Michael. Okay? This one's a tough one. Okay, The Exorcist was, to me, was child's play. This is not child's play. This is scary. This